All right, welcome everybody. It's good to see you on week 2 of this brand new version of our 36th annual ANJEE Winter Conference. My name is Mike Shodroff. I am the co-president of ANJEE, and I would like to also let you know I'll be your host today, along with my co-host Jess, who is also volunteering with ANJEE, and Laura McCluskey and Kendra Mintz will be here if you need any help and support. We're really excited. I keep telling the panelists here how excited I am for noticing nature in the city as part of our 36th annual winter conference. I do want to start off, though, by thanking the generosity of a few of our sponsors. As many of you know, this year we were able to be fully free to remove any financial barriers to get as many people here as possible. And that was with the help of some of our sponsors. That's PSEG, New Jersey Natural Gas, and by now many of you have heard an anonymous donor who just wants to be known as a friend to science and environmental education in New Jersey. Also, we're going to place our link to our YouTube channel in the chat room. There you can find workshops from our autumn conference. And as we've been recording the workshops and events over the course of this past week and the week to come, we will be uploading those to YouTube so you can have access to those. I would like to just remind everybody, please, we ask to have yourselves stay on mute during the presentation. If you do have any questions or comments, feel free to use the chat room. We'll be monitoring that so that when we get around to our Q&A session, we'll call on you if you want to ask it live, or we'll present the questions to our panelists. So without further ado, because I want to hear more from them than I do from me, let's get started with noticing nature in the city. At this particular roundtable, our co-moderators, Sarah O'Leary and Tenisha Malcolm Wint, will bring together a group of urban environmental education leaders. They will show how their work benefits intergenerational members of the community and how we can make urban nature more visible and valued. So Sarah O'Leary is Director of Youth and Family Education at Greater Newark Conservancy. Since 2009, she has worked with dozens of schools in Newark and surrounding urban communities to bring great STEAM programs, environmental learning, and garden-based education to students from pre-K to college. And Tenisha Malcolm Wint is a New Jersey-based entrepreneur and philanthropist who is on a mission to make nature conservancy the norm in every urban community. She generates a careful balance of grace and power to manage both roles. As a philanthropist, she functions as director of urban programs for the Nature Conservancy, one of the most reputable and wide-reaching environmental organizations in the world. So on that note, Sarah and Tenisha, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Well, welcome everyone. This is so exciting, and I can't help but be distracted. I'm seeing faces of people I haven't seen for a long time. I see you, Dena and Carla. We're really happy that ANJEE was, able to offer the conference this year and to make it free for people. It's made a huge difference, as I was saying, for us to be able to participate, for us to be able to invite a bunch of people. Hopefully we'll be able to be in person next year, but I think that there are some interesting benefits to the Zoom world that we're able to come together in a way that we hadn't been before. And so I decided I wanted to get back into ANJEE. I kind of haven't been to an ANJEE conference in a while, and I got excited about the idea of kind of opening up the window of what's going on in Newark. And so I talked with my friend Tenisha and got her roped in to inviting some folks that we know are doing really interesting programs in Newark, and we just want to kind of shine a spotlight on what all these folks are doing. I think that, well, I'm gonna show a couple pictures in a minute just of the Conservancy, because I want to invite you all. We're going to be doing this Saturday. I don't know how long the the in-person field experiences are open, how long that registration is open, but we're hosting one this weekend. So if you have never been to Greater Newark Conservancy, we would love to have you come visit. We're going to be hosting both at our Urban Environmental Center at 32 Prince Street, and then we're going to have folks go over to our farm. So that's this Saturday. It's a little plug. I'll show you a couple of pictures. Tenisha, why don't you introduce maybe kind of why you wanted to participate in this, and then we'll start introducing our folks.
Sure, certainly. So thanks again to ANJEE and its sponsors for the session today and sessions prior and leading up to the 30th. And thank you, Sarah, for the invitation to co-moderate with you today. And you asked the question, why this panel? And I simply can say, why not this panel, right? This is a cool and amazing opportunity to kind of share and learn from others. And I think the role of the Nature Conservancy's participation ultimately, I'd say, is significant because in the New Jersey chapter of the Nature Conservancy, taking on the work of working in urban environments is very new for us. I mean, historically, the Nature Conservancy has focused a lot of its attention and efforts on protecting land in very rural environments. And not that that's not important, but it is equally as important to work in urban spaces or more densely populated communities as well. And in doing so, I think it presents opportunity for us to really enhance equity and effectiveness of lands, supporting community-based approaches, engaging communities and exploring innovative options, and really elevating community voice and conversations around environmental related issues. So some of our panelists on today bring a little of that mix and flavor to it. I'm thrilled to have had the opportunity to work with many of them and just thrilled to join all of you this afternoon.
Thank you, Tenisha. I think what we want to get kicked off with, and we knew that we were short on time and long on people, so we were kind of allowing all of our panelists to introduce themselves because we're going to allow them to kind of focus on what they want to focus on. But we were going to start off, as Tenisha and I started planning this, we really were interested in, kind of expanding the idea of what environmental education is all about and really, touching on, the heart as much as the brain. And so she had the brilliant idea of inviting Kazi to be one of our presenters. And so I was hoping, Kazi, that you could both kind of introduce yourself and get us kicked off with a little contemplative practice.
Certainly. My name is Ib'nallah Kazi, and I'm with Newark Center for Meditative Culture. And we basically are a sacred space for folks who want to learn more about meditation. Those who are already meditating want to, let's say, just develop a consistent practice and to be a community, for those who are already meditating. And when we say meditative culture, we're not just talking meditation by itself. That includes things like Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, anything that brings you into contact with your inner self, anything that's contemplative in terms of its practice. So that's what we do. And do we still want to do a little meditation?
Yeah, I think we do. I think that's going to help set our intention correctly. Please.
All right. Then. Everyone, just, if you can, get comfortable in your seat. Just get comfortable in your seat. If you're in a chair, you're sitting on the floor, whatever it is, just get into a nice posture that allows you to just sit and relax. And what I want you to do is to focus your eyes on the tip of your nose. Don't close your eyes. Focus them on the tip of your nose. There you go. Just hold that focus there. And as you're focusing, I want you to feel your body. Feel what's going on in your body right now. Just start at the top of your head and let your attention just slowly scan from the top of your head through the forehead, down to the cheeks, chin, shoulders, down through your arms into the lower arm, the hands. And from the neck, just go down into your chest and upper back. Just feel down into the lower torso, lower back and the belly, down to the region of the hips. So go down to your knees, down below to the lower legs, into your feet. Just sit there for a little while. Feel your feet on the floor, or maybe they're crossed. I'm not sure how you sit. Just let it sit there at the lower body for a while. Just feel. Now I want you to come back up slowly. You're going to bring your attention from the feet to the lower legs, to your knees, up through the thighs, to the hips and the buttocks area. Bring it up to your belly and your lower back. And slowly up to the chest and the upper back, to the neck. Once again, feel your arms from your hands up to the elbows, and the elbows to the shoulders. Shoulders back to the neck, into your mouth and cheeks, your nose, all the way up to your eyes and your eyebrows, forehead, back to the top, very top of the head. Now I want to get your focus back on the tip of your nose and just observe the tip of your nose. Eyes are still open. Now, if your eyes start to get tired and feel like they're fluttering and they want to close, just allow them to close. But not close the eyes purposefully. Keep them focused on the tip of your nose. And if they want to close, then you allow them to close. While you're looking at the tip of your nose, you're going to take your attention to the breath. And I just want you to feel your breathing. You try to stay with each inhalation and each exhalation. And follow it. Follow the inhalation from the time it enters your nostrils, down through your throat, from your chest, down to your belly. Feel the belly expand, feel it contract. And then follow that breath back up through the belly, through the chest, through the throat. And feel that air as it exhales, as it leaves the nostrils. And I just want you to stay with that inhaling and exhaling. Let's be silent for a few seconds. And now I just want you to take your last 3 complete inhalations and exhalations. And after that last exhalation, if your eyes are closed, you're going to slowly open them. Bring yourself back to the here and now. Kind of give your shoulders a little shake and return to the room. Okay, everybody should be back with us now. Hopefully we're a little focused and ready to move on.
Definitely always need that little invitation to focus, because it's very easy to become unfocused through all this virtual world we're participating in. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we were gonna go through, and I'm gonna just invite Keven Porter from Rabbit Hole Farm to introduce himself and give a little bit of a little bit of information about Rabbit Hole, and then we'll go on just to remind our panelists that then we're going to do a little reflection on kind of our own narrative, how we entered into this work, or how y'all entered into this work. So Keven, you want to just, did we get your camera working? Oh no. Let's Keven, and I can't, you look unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Okay, so Keven, yeah, we were having some trouble with him. So why don't we go on to the next person, and hopefully we can get Keven hooked up. Dena, would you mind jumping in?
Not at all. That's the frustrating part about all of this, right? Wow, do I want to hear from Keven. Hopefully we'll get him. But yes, my name is Dena Corbin. I am founder and program designer for Natural Ground One. Natural Ground One is the company that has been called to view wellness through a different lens. And we do that with a plant-based intervention and personal growth initiatives. And I'll tell you more about my gardening program, which I started when I was teaching, called Grow a Garden and Grow Yourself.
Thank you, Dena.
You're welcome.
Fallon, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about STEAM Urban?
Yes, hello everyone. So glad to be here. My name is Fallon Davis, and I'm the CEO and president of STEAM Urban. We are an expressive arts STEM discipline education program for urban students of all ages. Our focus is to be able to provide programming, free programming, quality programming to urban students and marginalized communities. And so we use the expressive arts as the way to engage students. And we say all ages because it's more than just the youth. The parents have to be engaged. The multi-generations need to mentor because representation matters. And so our goal is to be the connector of learning, the school, the community, and the arts. And so we use that. And then we also use the, very important disciplines of STEM to engage these careers in science, engineering, the arts, but to also make sure that they're always able to define who they are as people. So we're excited to do this work. We're glad to continue to connect with different organizations to bring quality programming to urban communities.
Thank you. So what we were going to do, I'm hoping that Keven will be able to join us, but I think, we want to use our time. So what we were wanting to invite folks to do is to tell a little bit about their story. We're all, what I think is interesting about ANJEE, and even thinking about this stuff, is people come in with their background, and what brought them to this work. And it's, it's really varied. And, but I have found that learning about the narrative, that people bring to things is really important to find ways that we overlap. Because I was saying to Tenisha, my background is as a landscape architect and a horticulturist. And I, as a landscape architect, kind of got very into designy stuff. And when I went to my first ANJEE conference, I had to say, oh, this is a totally different crowd. And sort of see where the narrative that, I was kind of bringing to it overlapped with what folks, there were bringing to their work. So I'm really interested in kind of from all of the panelists to hear a little bit about the narrative of how they came to the work that they're doing, and why they do it. So we can just go in the same order. We kind of had to mix it up a little bit, but Kazi, would you want to start on that?
Sure, no problem. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, for me, it would have to go back to childhood when I was probably 8, 9 years old. I'm 5 years older than my next sibling. You know, I'm the oldest. And my mother used to take us to what she called the country. I grew up in New York and Queens. And the country meant we were going upstate. She had several friends who had homes upstate, and some of them had bungalows and things like that. This is back in the 70s. But because I'm kind of older than my brother and sister, they'd be playing together. I'd usually go out to the woods and just disappear for hours, and just be out there exploring and just seeing, you know, what's out there. It's very different from where I lived, and I kind of really just loved going up there every year. I look forward to it. And then, you know, you get older, you become a teenager, and you disappear from home. You're not really hanging out with the family as much. But in my late 20s, in the 80s, I was part of a group that was running an adolescent rites of passage program for young males. And we'd run that program from September through June. And at the end of the program, we'd take them up to Harriman Park in New York for a weekend, overnight, back, you know, just camping out. And they'd have different chores and different tests they'd have to do. But during that time, the first time we did it, I just fell in love with sleeping out in the woods and hiking in the woods. And so after that first time, I just went out and studied, got some books on camping and backpacking, and bought all the equipment and just started going solo. And I met someone a couple of years later, maybe 2 or 3 years later, I met a young lady who was also into it. There wasn't too many Black people that were hiking and backpacking at that time. And we started something called Harriet Tubman Hiking Society. And so that's how I really got interested in going out into the woods and hiking regularly and backpacking, and been doing it ever since. And now I'm kind of on third generation. And my children, they learned, I took them out, and now their children have gone out with us. So it's become a family thing.
I'm putting up here, Kazi, some images from everyone seeing the images of the hike that they did? Good. So yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Were you?
Yeah, those pictures are from their last urban hike we did, Newark Center for Meditative Culture, in cooperation with you guys. And that was a great walk that we did from downtown Newark all the way to Branchbrook Park. That was more of an urban hike, a combination urban hike.
Yeah, I hadn't seen this one. I like this one. Walking down Broad. That's Broad, right?
Yeah, that's Broad Street. Yes, it is.
Do we have Keven? We haven't surfaced a Keven here. Well, we'll do a bunch of Keven at the end if we get him on. But how about Dena? Would you like to say a little bit about how you kind of, what's your story? How did you come in?
What's my story? How did I get started? I started gardening with my daddy when I was a little girl back in Lawrence Township, which is Mercer County. And I just remember going out with my dad after school, him coming to pick me up in that big pickup truck, and we would go and spend hours gardening. And when I came to be an adult, and after graduating from college, I really didn't do much gardening here in Newark, because this is where I settled once I graduated from college. But it wasn't until I started teaching that I realized that gardening would help me bring some of what I needed, what my special needs students needed to see visually. When you were talking about time order words and words like measurement and comparison, and the process of photosynthesis, and why do leaves change color in the fall? So, why do leaves change color? And so that's really what got me into the place that I'm in now with gardening, is just really trying to connect my students with a gardening base so that they can better understand their skills, and knowing that even though they're within the urban environment, they still can have access to produce, to food. They can grow it, they can eat it, they can serve it, they can share it with their families. And it was really interesting that even though it was never really like a schoolyard garden, I never had those. Maybe once when I was when I taught high school, we had a raised bed, and we grew a lot of herbs and tomatoes and collard greens and and tomato, cucumbers and plants like that. But most of my gardening or my experience connecting my children and their families came about through in-class support. You know, I had plants, I had herbs, because herbs are really easy to, not, well, they're easy to grow. They do much better outdoors, but you can also grow them on a windowsill. So that's where I grew a lot of my herbs, was in the classroom. And it was interesting because when I would have these monthly, for my high school students, it would show what you know. When it was elementary, it was show and tell. And I would have the parents come in and the children would pick a subject that they would want to elaborate on it and figure out how they learned and tell about their skill set and what was interesting about that subject matter for them. Instead of serving cakes and cookies and sweets, I would have different fruits and vegetables. And parents were surprised at the vegetables that their kids would eat: sweet peas, broccoli, carrots, lettuce, tomatoes. And that kind of led me to understand that it's a lot about exposure also, because the parents were so surprised, and a lot of times they weren't eating these things at home. So my students would go home and make a shopping list, and the parents would say, yes, now they want to eat more vegetables, now they want to eat more herbs. So that's what really connected me to what I'm doing now. Is when I first started teaching, that's what I needed, because my students needed some hands-on engagement. And that's what environmental education will do. That's what a gardening program will do, is it provides children with hands-on experiences, and they learn through their own experiences. It's guided oftentimes, but it's a learning experience that they can appreciate.
Love that. Fallon, you want to tell a little bit of your narrative? I know you started out a little bit with it, but tell us a little bit more.
Well, so, you know, my journey has been very unique. I would say, like, it's twofold for me, because I'm an advocate and a radical educator all in one. So I fight for injustices overall. But so, you know, for whatever reason, growing up, people leaned on me as a leader or a mentor. And, you know, it's not always the easiest role to take on, because it comes with a lot of responsibility, you know. And it's like, it starts with something as little as being the class project lead, to running for class president, to being inducted to the International Honor Society. So I just kept continuing to dig deeper into how I can change my community. It didn't matter to me just to play sports or to get good grades. I really wanted to change the world. And I would say that all the time, you know, like, I'm going to change the world, you know, like that's who I'm going to be. And so throughout my journey, I've done tremendous things for marginalized communities. I created fashion shows for queer bodies and those with, different challenges and difficulties. I developed programming so they would feel confident on stage. And I was able to create events that really changed people's lives. And then I found my path to education, and I knew that was my purpose. My purpose was to educate and to use my experiences along the way to help people find resolutions to the challenges that they face. And so one of those things is the environment in our community. As Black people, we have so much of the lack thereof. Like, I was not taught gardening and healthy eating. And I've seen a lot of my family members, you know, die of different diseases and mental illnesses. And it was like a lot. It's so many. It's not just one family member. It's a plethora that I experienced. And so I knew my journey had to be personal. I had to really take my journey seriously for my health. And I even, now I'm a vegan. But it was personal for me. I didn't have anybody to join me, to tell me to eat better, to think better, to, be more involved in what the environment does. I didn't have that. And so I wanted to be that for other people. And so it led me on this amazing journey to be here and to be advocating for environmental injustices. And, it's been an incredible experience. So, you know, this is just one way of changing the world, but it's a huge way, because for Black communities, it's like life or death.
Thank you. For me, I gotta say, like I said, I come from like a horticulture background. I went to agriculture school, like everybody wore a trucker hat back in the day. I had to take several semesters of turf management, and I just knew from my own, upbringing, my raising, I was like, this is somehow, where does this mesh with the things I care about? And I feel like it's only kind of now that it's all coming together for me. Like, even though I've, been working at the Conservancy for all these years, like now I feel like I'm more hooked in. And I don't know, that's my next question, unless you want to ask us a specific question, Tenisha. Okay, well, my follow-up is kind of, we pulled you all together as part of this, Environmental Educators Conference. And I'm kind of curious, do you see yourself as environmental educators, and like, why would that be important? Because for me, as I said, it's trying to figure out, like, where is the overlap of the things that I most care about, and what are the different inroads that bring people into this? I love some of the stuff Dena said about, what is real for kids and giving them something real. And like, even though I can kind of start from like a perspective of like, oh, we want to teach them about the world and all of the complexity of it, just starting with some food is a great way. So I'm just curious about how you guys see yourselves relating to environmental education. At any order, anybody who wants to jump in.
I'll go. That was an interesting question, because, sometimes, I know for me, I don't always like to toot my own horn, so to speak, but it's important. When that question came up, I was like, absolutely. Because what I do in my passion right now is really to connect our children, our communities, our families to a huge part of what's missing in their life. And that's nature, that's that connection. Because when you can begin to teach people about the world and the environment in which they live, it opens up a bigger responsibility to do something, and lack thereof, right? As Fallon said, lack thereof. So one of the things, among many things that I'm passionate about, is native plants, right? And I would not have known that had I not taken the course in a master gardener. I'm a master gardener in Essex County, and I'm one of the founding or steering committee members of the Native Plant Society here in New Jersey. Now we have a society in Newark, yay, Newark, right? So one of the things that you want to begin to teach our young people and our families is what's going to happen when there's no more milkweed, because milkweed, right, is the only plant that the monarch butterfly lays its eggs on. So if you have no milkweed, where are the butterflies? Where are the other pollinators that some of those native plants rely on for survival? And when they survive, it makes our world a better place. It makes us to survive. So for me, teaching about environmental justices and teaching our children about caring for the environment is our saving grace. It's our saving grace. And especially with the time that we're in, when our kids come back, well, I'm going to stop right there because I don't want to go too far. But really, I mean, it's so, and you can't deny that every human being who has a connection to the earth is a better person, and they care for the environment and their surroundings in a different way than somebody else who doesn't have any connection, right? I used to teach I taught my kids this and my students as well. If you go to the corner store and you have a piece of paper, candy paper, put it in your pocket until you get home. Put it in your pocket, because litter is everywhere. You don't know where that's going to go, and it may be just one little piece, but an accumulation. You have to do little pieces of of things. So that's one of my passions right now, is to really educate people about the ease and the simplicity in growing and caring for our environment. It's just really not that hard.
Either Kazi, Fallon, or Tenisha, do you guys see yourself as, environmental educator? Does that like feel like a term that you would embrace?
I would say that in an informal way. I don't consider myself an expert at any sense, but in an informal way. I think that getting people into natural environments is education in and of itself. It's grounding. We live in an information age. The internet is everything, especially children. And they need to get out into nature. It's very grounding. It's kind of like getting the both of both worlds. We don't want to say, okay, I'm totally anti-technology. But if you're just dealing with technology and not getting out into nature, you're losing something. Nature places you in the here and now. The internet and information is great, but it's also very ephemeral and can be abstract. And it keeps us up in our heads. Whereas we have a whole body here that has senses. We need to smell, we need to taste, we need to touch, you need to see things, and not just the things that you're seeing all the time in the way that it's being presented to you all the time. You need to get into spaces where it's different, and that wakes you up, because doing the same thing over and over and over it becomes conditioning and habitual. Get into a wild space or an urban wild space, you automatically are put into a situation where you have to wake up, because this stimulus is different than the stimulus that I've been getting continuously every day. So it's a grounding when you deal with natural spaces. And in addition to that, I think that, how do I want to put this? It puts you in the here and now, and it gives you a different relationship. The Native Americans used to say they have this term, all of our relations, because they consider nature to be part of the family. They consider the animals to be part of the family, the insects, the rivers, everything is family, because we're all connected and we all dependent on each other. Same way that we inhale oxygen, trees exhale carbon dioxide. We have this relationship. But if you're just stuck to a screen, you're never going to realize it, although you're in that relationship at every single moment. So I think in that sense, nature does the educating. I just like to get people into it so they can.
You're just the connector.
Yes.
I think it would be fair for me to say the same as Kazi. Like, I am not a formally trained educator. I consider myself a street educator, whereas I can take the knowledge that I have and the access that I have to information and bring it to people on that grassroots level and serve as that connector. In urban environments, we are the most impacted by environmental related issues, and never think sometimes that the cause of the issues that we have, from the air that we breathe and the respiratory health conditions that we face and the heaviness sometimes in our living spaces, is related to nature. We don't even think about it, right? So putting into perspective the realities that exist, it helps people to look through things differently and have those up close and personal conversations with folks that may be so caught up with the busyness of everyday life and survival that they're not making the connection to the environmental issues that surround and are impacting them. So not a formal educator, as I said, in any traditional form, but serving as that vessel and kind of shepherding those conversations and exposing and better equipping folks so not only they can advocate for themselves, but their community at wide, is how I see myself, as an educational supporter, environmental educational supporter or ambassador, a little bit of a champion behind the scenes, and hoping that has that ripple effect and makes a broader and wider reach.
Excellent. Fallon, if you want to chime in, or we have more questions that we want to get to.
Yeah, I can chime into it. I think everyone's, story and background is extremely necessary. Everyone has to play a part in this. This is a huge beast to tackle. And for me, I would say that you have to be on the front line sometimes. Sometimes there has to be people that are willing to get down and dirty and put your hands in the dirt. And that's the type of person I am. I go to bat for change whenever it comes to marginalized communities. So whatever that means, I'm going to shake the hands I need to, sit down with the people I need to, knock on the doors I need to make sure that we can get things done. And then I'm also going to make sure that I'm not only just speaking, but I'm creating action and solving problems. Everything that, I create or do, it's solving a problem. You can be having an educational program, using the arts, and it can be so cheesy, but if we understand exactly what the arts means for people in whole, it has a huge thing to do with environment and their environment and how they're going to be the rest of their lives. So for me, I am an environmental educator because I am willing to be on the front lines, on this catalyst for change. That's my role. So, I'm willing to be in the fight.
I love it. Can we, Fallon, will you stand up a little bit so we can see your shirt? Yes. I got so excited to just start learning about what STEAM Urban was this year. I was super psyched, and I just can't wait until we can start having programs, and you can bring all these fabulous radical educators into our space and just all kinds of stuff. So from what folks are talking about, I mean, the kind of segue from what Fallon was just saying, was the idea that that it's, there's education, but there's action. And we were talking about, we already, did this call, right? Like this panel, we had a great conversation talking about what we wanted to talk about here. And we were, and I'm going to, throw this out there and say, I know nothing because I just started reading his work, but I was looking at the work of Julian Adjiman, who's a academic who writes and talks about environmental issues, and especially like the connection of environmental issues and community. He talks about the ecology of environmentalism, not meaning like the ecology of environmental education in communities, like how we impact communities and how we work with communities. So I'm kind of just interested in that question of like, what's the role? Because I know, Dena, you have a whole history of working in schools, but now you're working with the community in different ways, and just interested in how folks are kind of working with community to do the work they do. Anybody want to jump on that question?
Well, for me, I like connecting with communities that are already engaging, who are you can say like-minded individuals. A lot of what we do, it doesn't take a reinvention of the wheel. It's just connecting with the right people. And Newark is a vast area of resources. There's just so many different organizations. When I'm working with United Parks is one, the Greater Newark Conservancy, New Jersey Plant Society, Master Gardeners, all of these organizations are here as a service to people. So if you have an organization, or if you have a community center or a daycare or a community block, and you're not connected to a garden space, then these are things that you need to reach out to people and get involved. There's an easy, sometimes we tend to overthink things and make things very difficult. And for me, I just don't see this as being a very difficult situation. If you're in a community area, you have to engage the people that live around that particular area. You can't just pop in and say you want to start planting some stuff. You have to reach out to the people that are in that immediate area, because that's how you maintain sustainability, right? Because you can be an organization that wants to put something in place, but you may not have the resources to keep it going. The surrounding community, those organizations that you connect with, will be a support for you. Know in your community who's open to support. Every county in New Jersey has a Master Gardeners program, the Rutgers Cooperative Extension, 4-H programs, American Heart Association. They did a whole series on gardening this summer. So it's, as I say, gardening, my daddy used to say, plant it and they'll come. If the people don't come, then the birds, the cats, the pollinators, and everything else is going to come. But you plant it and the people will come. But you have to make sure that you're tapping into the right people that are in that community. When my daddy gardened, even though it was kind of behind, remember Baskin Robbins? Y'all remember Baskin Robbins? Y'all have Baskin Robbins in Essex County? Okay, well, where I was from was Baskin Robbins. And it wasn't a whole lot of residential area there because it was a large space, but he still contacted people in that community to come and support and see what he was doing. So it wasn't like a community garden, it was his garden, but he still wanted to have the input of the people that were around that. So you can't just start something and not involve the people that are around it, and reach out to the people who are there to support you.
Can I jump in for Keven, since I guess he has not been able to work out his tech issues, but I just want to say, give the shout out to Rabbit Hole Farm, because they're an example of, thank you. they're an example of a place, he has an Adopt-A-Lot space that's on his block where he grew up, and he's expanded it. And it's this amazing garden that you have to visit, but it's not just a, come and look at it kind of place. He's got programming there all the time, and people, come to him with ideas of things they want to do. And it has grown in a lot of different ways. And I think that the example of what he's done with Rabbit Hole Farm is a terrific one, is what it's one that I aspire to, because we've got this urban environmental center, but we don't have all of those connections to community. And I'm hoping that sort of we're going to grow our network to make more of those things happen. Anyway, who else wants to jump in with any words about community?
Well, community is what we drive off of. So when we developed STEAM Urban, we realized we can't keep doing the same things that are happening. There's so many different type of programs. There's so many after school programs, all these different things. We wanted to fill a need, as I was saying before. So we realized one of the things that, especially for urban communities, that kind of disconnects them from quality programming is money. And it's being able to drive to the location or have time, because most urban families, Black families are working multiple jobs or overtime, or, so we wanted to be able to think about those things to really find some resolutions. So even with COVID and the way things were going, because we just launched officially this past March 2020. And thank God, very grateful for the way we've been moving. But we just hit the ground running. You have to just do it. You have to find a way to connect regardless. And so we found a way to connect even with COVID and what was happening. So we did programming, and we're continuously doing programming virtually. That's free for the community. We've connected with so many organizations. We actually work with Rabbit Hole Farm, Newark Science and Sustainability. We have different radical educators from all over the nation that tune in. Even we had a radical educator from Nigeria who was a part of our program this weekend. So what we did is we found a new way to develop programming. How do you reach people from all over the world that have the similarities in what they're teaching? This work isn't new. You know, there's people doing this work all over the world, and we're not reaching out to them. We're not seeing what they're, you know, trying to connect with them. How can we help them? So our platform virtually is what we've really focused on as a way to bring programming to all families. And so, you know, we're continuously developing that, but we're also developing it within the community. We're partnering with Zion Park to develop a park in the West Ward of Newark, and right across the street, we're in the hopes of adopting a lot. We put the application in this Friday, so we hope we get approved for it, but for it to be a food garden. And so we have programming lined up for that to happen with the community in the West Ward, which is a community that honestly has gotten so left with, you know, without resources. So all of that programming has to be free. And so that's a big part of, you know, our mission. And we've realized that that's going to be the way to help this community find ways to bring the quality programming to them. They can't come to us. Like that's with everything going on in their life, we have to come to the community and connect with them. So we are doing everything we can with community. It is so powerful.
Excellent. Anybody else want to jump in on that? Or
Sure. It's funny, we all have a lot in common that we've also done work with Keven and our lease at Rabbit Hole Farms. Very early, when we were still an initiative before we became 501c3, we did many programs at Rabbit Hole. And we also did some programs with them in Branchwick Park, you know, some programs with the youth there. So we've been kind of working with them for some time. Also, Newark Conservancy. The last hike that we did, we partnered with you guys, and most of the people that showed up were people that came from Newark Conservancy's influence. Cool. And it's funny, it's kind of full circle, because back in about 2012, I think, or somewhere around 2012, I used to teach a Tai Chi class on the grounds of Newark Conservancy. Yeah. Another group we've done some work with is Hikeolution. That's founded by Kiana Jones. They do hikes all around New Jersey, and they're starting to expand it to other places. And so they've been doing the urban hike with us from the time that we started here. Kiana is actually one of our board members now, along with Leslie Arthur, who's a teacher in West Orange High School. And so we've partnered with a number of different groups throughout Newark to kind of do our nature and environmental types of programs. So,
I see we're getting at that. First of all, I got to remember to talk to you, because I want to hear more about that teacher, because I have a student at West Orange High School, and I'm trying to keep him on the path of environmentalism. I see we're getting towards 5:30, and so I want to open up. We still have more questions, but we're happy to take questions from folks who are in the crowd here. I think that I'm not sure how you've been doing them, Mike or Jess. Do you want people to type or to type and then?
So a great way to do it is, if anyone would like to come on camera, down at the bottom under your reactions, there is the raise hand feature. And if you raise your hand, you'll pop up on the screen, and we'll be able to get you guys unmuted and you can ask your questions. If not, feel free to pop your question in the chat, and I'll be able to read it out to our panelists.
That's great. And as you're typing those in, just please do look, because we've got a lot of good resources shared in the chat. And
actually, may I jump in with a question?
Yes.
First of all, again, thank you, but I'll thank you all again after this. Based off of a few things that I heard, Dena, I know you were talking about the whole concept of, right, you only protect what you love. And Kazi, you were talking about getting anyone, students in particular, out into green spaces to really live it and breathe it. And I'm going to be completely transparent. One of the things that we have to get over in the New Jersey environmental education world is often we hear these comparisons like, oh, we could teach kids this, but, unfortunately in Camden and Newark and places like that, they just don't get that. And I know it's not true. I've been to these places and there's beautiful spots. So could you share, some of your favorite spaces in Newark where you get kids out there and they get to live and breathe it, so we can, start making people realize that, Newark's got it.
I know one of the best kept secrets for me is the Greater Newark Conservancy. It truly is a wonderful space. Weekway Park is another outdoor space. So there's spaces around, you just have to find and look for them. And Sarah, do you want me to talk about my adopted spot?
Yeah, I think that's a good segue to that. I was going to invite people to do that. I would say, part of it is tuning in. So yeah, talk about Adopt a Spot, Dena, please.
To your question, Mike, it's not, for me, it's not so much about a particular space. It's about all of the space. So what I did when I was teaching in high school, I did it with high school and I did it in my elementary classes also. Is I did this thing called Adopt a Spot or Adopt a Lot. And instead of me sending children home on winter break, Easter break, and even during the summer with a packet of dittos, people don't say dittos anymore, right? Worksheets. You know what I'm saying? I age myself. But anyhow, I would send them home with a homemade journal. I would take construction paper, fold it in half, put blank pieces of paper inside of it, and it would have, I don't want to leave everything, let me find my notes. It would have their name, their date, the location of what they're going to adopt, and let me see, I just want to make sure I have everything. Yeah, it would have the location of the spot or the item, because it could be a tree, or it could be a spot in their backyard, or it could be a spot on their way to the corner store. It can be a spot anywhere, right? And then it had that particular date where they would make that observation. And it would, in each page per time that they were out had all this information on it. And then they would have to describe what they would see. Now, remind you, I'm working with the special needs population. So what we did was we would make a word bank that they can pick from instead of having to think of these words, words that would reflect an outdoor environment, rough, ants, cold, snow, just a word bank of words that they can use to describe a certain area. And then if their limitation in writing, then they would draw. And every day they would do this. In the morning, they could choose the morning, the afternoon, or the evening. And this was for their entire time that they were out on their break. And then when they came back in, it gave them an opportunity. It gave me an opportunity to use that information to do graphs, because it was like, okay, how many people did their observation in the morning? Okay, so we can make a bar graph or a line graph. Okay, let's take one of your days and write a narrative using the narrative elements, the plot, the time of day, right? Was anybody in that particular area? So that's what I mean by, it's not just about one particular space, it's about all the space, because what it allowed the students to do is make an observation of everything that was around them, wherever they went, whenever they went.
I love that. We're on the same page, because I did that also with my students. If you get a chance, there's a book. The title is The Forest Unseen. And It was, the author basically goes to the same exact spot. He calls it his mandala. And that same exact spot for a year and just writes about it. And so
Yep, and that's
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
It was much more engaging, and that it was their own experience. And it was a recall when we talked about bar graphs and narrative elements. And it was a recall that they can bring back to their mind because it was their own experiences. And when we live in and recall our own experiences, it's more grounding, and it's just a better environment.
Right. Jess, were there any other questions? Because I
didn't see any pop up in the
well,
chat.
I want to ask in response to Mike's question, Tenisha, can you say a few words about the article that you shared? Because part of my impetus for doing this was, you're looking at me like, I don't remember that. You shared an article kind of about, seeing spaces of the city as having value, urban spaces, even, whatever, that your crappy local lot has, like if we're only seeing nature as something, that is perfectly green and beautiful and, or whatever, classically beautiful, then we're never going to kind of, get the majority of people to kind of value things. You're still looking at me.
Yeah,
like,
I don't remember.
That was nearly a month ago, Sarah.
I'm not recalling the article. Apparently it was great.
I'm gonna find it and share it.
And I've read a couple of different things, so it's just probably melded with everything else that I read. But I mean, there's just to speak to what you're saying, right? There are so many opportunities to kind of bolster and enhance and reimagine what spaces can look like and be innovative and creative with that, right? So there are vacant lots that have the potential to be repurposed. And, we asked the question earlier about like, how do you involve community? And yes, you ask people for insight and participation and feedback. But I mean, ultimately, community in a situation where you have a vacant lot that you're reimagining is asking community how they can, what they would like to see, and then figuring out ways in which to involve them in the process. So just thinking about programming and opportunities to include them in the redesign and reimagine is always helpful and has great utility. And I think the city of Newark is just, there are so many people who are committed and dedicated and are optimistic and hopeful and, really want to kind of debunk those myths that, Mike, you mentioned. People say, in urban spaces, people can't figure out where kids can be educated as it relates to environmental issues. But there are a plethora of opportunities if just tapped into. And if brought full circle, I think there continues to be great advantage where communities come together to really debunk those myths and change those narratives and create a new story for a community that is just filled with so much pride and love and dedication. People appreciate beautiful things. So why not invest in them to make it happen? So not sure if that speaks directly to all of your article reference. But
I'm looking for it and I'm like, oh my gosh, Tenisha puts out so much stuff that I can't find it right now. But we'll find it. We'll share it with folks.
If I can, sorry, Sarah, if I can hop in real quick, there is one resource that I personally have used for years that another environmental educator introduced me to, and it's called What's Good in My Hood by Akima Price. And it's a notebook similar to a coloring book, but it's something that adults and children can work on together. And it's a great way for especially people who live in more urban areas to get out into their neighborhood and see that this patch of dirt and grass around a tree in the middle of a sidewalk is something that is nature and not just something to walk past every day where a dog might, do his business. So it's a resource that I personally love, and I invite other people to check it out. I believe she also has some YouTube videos.
That's great. Thank you. Actually, I'm just noticing that there is a New York restoration project that uses that same title, that I don't know if they're referencing that same work, but that's really helpful. That's cool. So we put together, if there's no other questions, Dena's already shared her little back pocket teaching. I have a little thing to share, and Fallon, I know you were going to talk a little bit about art as just like a little closing, you know, a gift, parting gift. Would you want to go, Fallon, or Kazi?
Yeah, I can go.
Okay.
So one of the most important things that I would say as a takeaway is to find a way to connect nature to art. So whenever you can, take a walk, just because fresh air is important anyway. But along that walk, allow yourself to pick up things that you see. Don't worry about what it is or question the different things. If it's a leaf, if it's a branch, if it's some sand, pick it up. You can bring a bag with you. Bring it home with some paper, paint, glue, and stamp it, glue it, construct it, and just connect with the art, become one with nature. And that is the first and the easiest way to start to connect with nature. You'll realize that how valuable it is even to your life in that small way.
I love it.
One of the things I would share with folks is something that's around all of us in urban areas that we don't really take notice of. It's weeds. Weeds are everywhere. And weeds, they all carry a lesson that we really need to look at in this time. Weeds are very resilient, very resilient. They get no assistance. No one waters them. No one tries to help them out and create environments for them. In fact, it's the exact opposite. We try to get rid of weeds, but they just keep coming back. There's an old comedian who passed away some years ago. His name was Robin Williams. And he had a saying, we don't die, we multiply. And that's what weeds do. They don't die, they multiply no matter what you do to them. So start observing the weeds in your surroundings. They're there. Even when you get rid of them, there's only a matter of time before they come back. And you can learn a lot from how resilient nature is by just watching the weeds around.
That is so deep that I feel kind of like it's a bit of a it's a bit of a letdown to share my thing, but I just wanted to show, first of all, I just want to show this real quick. Again, a plug for y'all to come visit this weekend. The image here on the left is our STEAM camp, and we're making we made little log rafts and put them in our pond there, but that's at our Urban Environmental Center. And on the right is our farm. And this was a program we did this fall. Well, you can tell it's this fall because we're all wearing masks. We did a pumpkin patch there, and Malcolm's showing off wheat that we grew on our farm, which, it's like, oh, this is an environmental education. Like, I can tell you every single person who came through, and it didn't matter what their background was super, excited just to see, oh, there's wheat growing and I can try and grind it, and, all of that, like that connected people. And I just, as my little back pocket thing of great stuff to do with kids is chalk sticks, that sidewalk chalk and any kind of stick. You can find any kind of stick and get up close and personal with that stick, and then throw out a bunch of sidewalk chalk and have kids go at it. And I said, I love this picture of this girl coloring this stick, because you can just see the concentration that she's got in, like, I am going to cover this stick. And kids will just, they will do it for, like, literally 20 minutes, which is a very long time in kid time. And then you can build cool sculptures and stuff, wall hangings like these ones we did. So that's one of my favorite little stuff to do with kids, to get them tuned into making stuff. I think we have kind of completed our journey here. Let's see. Jess, what's your, if anyone has one, the great, oh, Seek. Yeah, iNaturalist is a great one, and Seek for people, for getting kids to get hooked in by using technology. Love that.
Yes, Sarah, I think at this point, we're probably going to have to wrap it up.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap it up.
Not only could I probably go for another hour and a half, but hopefully I'd love to maybe put together a round 2 of this panel. And Angie's going to start doing some Zoom series throughout the rest of the winter into the spring. I would love to have this group back, and maybe we could get Keven on board as well this time.
Yeah, we have to hear from Keven because he's a great resource. I want to also, real quick though, before we go, I put in the chat earlier, Mike, and I don't know if you can share it because I'm having trouble putting it up there. But we have our Beds and Breakfast conference coming up in the middle of February, and it's going to also be free, and it's few days of resources shared by mostly local Newark folks, but people from all over, kind of all about building community and connecting people to growing food. So if that,
just popped it. Yep, just dropped it in.
Good.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone. Thank you, ANJEE, for hosting us.
Our pleasure, and thank you so much to you, Sarah, and Tenisha, Fallon, Dena, Kazi, and Keven. Even though you're not here, you'll see this video. We'll get you back.
Right.
We really appreciate, your time here today, and I can't express my gratitude just for the wonderful work that you're all doing. The A in ANJEE stands for Alliance, and I'm glad to be part of this alliance with all of you.
Thank you for having us. It was
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Our pleasure.
Yeah.
And just a few reminders before we go. There's still a week left in the conference, so please go check it out. You can, there's a lot to do. Check out our YouTube channel. As Sarah mentioned, Saturday we do have the infield person experiences. I'm already signed up to go to Newark Conservancy, but Wednesday will be the last day to register for those, so you can find those on the website. And again, PSEG, New Jersey Natural Gas, and our anonymous donor, thank you for allowing all of us to join this conference for free this year. Everybody have a wonderful evening, and again, thanks for all your input and your contributions.
Thank you too.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Have a good night. Thanks, Mike.
You got it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. All the best.